Hello and welcome to another edition of the Moving Iron Podcast. This podcast is proudly provided by Axon, helping dealers move more iron for almost 100 years. Find out more at axontire.com. Axon was started almost 100 years ago out of a passion for keeping agriculture moving. It's that same passion that drives them today. With a vision for a better experience for both farmer and dealer, they set out to create a better way to move more iron. When you partner with Axon, you get immediate access to a full range of products and solutions designed to meet the complex needs of today's grower. Axon carries all major brands and sizes of tires, wheels, and tracks. From custom colors and sizes to fully customized wheels, you can have the solution for virtually any problem today's farmer is trying to solve. To find more or become an Axon dealer, please visit axontire.com.
Moving iron in the 21st century. Hard-working people working hard for you and me. Moving iron, time and time again. Through the years you'll find us here. Moving iron.
Hello and welcome to Moving Iron Podcast number 234 with my guest, Tony LaPorta. And Tony is a guy that I've had some interaction with online, and Tony's actually a big fan of Sean Hackett, which is on here every twice a week. And Tony reached out to me one day. We started talking. And I was like, you know what, man, we should do a podcast together. So I got Tony to suckered into being on the podcast here. So Tony, how you doing, man?
It's my mantra. Today's the best day of my life.
Right on. That's a good one.
If it's not the best day of my life, I'm doing something wrong and I need to change.
Yep. So Tony can be found at tonylaporta.com, and his last name is spelled LaPorte. And that's how LaPorta, sorry, .com there. And he got a YouTube channel out there as well that you can check out. But Tony is, I have Chip Nelliger on here that talks about what's going on in the markets, and I got Sean Hackett's on here that talks about what's going on in the market. And both those guys are analysts, right? They spend their time advising customers what to do. Tony's an actual trader, and Tony's perception of what's going on in the marketplace is going to be significantly different than I think what those other two guys are, because he's actually living and breathing what's going on in the digital pits now, not so much more in the actual pits, people yelling and screaming at each other, but actually living and dying every day by his trade. So I thought Tony would bring a good light into what we're doing here. But before we get into all that, Tony, let's talk about who you are and what you've been doing and how you kind of got to this point in your life.
Well, I grew up on the south side of Chicago,
okay,
and graduated from college, and I was in a pub on the south side, Touch of Green, a good Irish pub, and ran into a high school buddy. He was a poker playing buddy of mine. And he says, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm looking for a job." He says, "I know what you want to do the rest of your life." And, I went to college for 4 years. He went to the Board of Trade. And within 2 weeks, I started on the floor of the Chicago Mercantile Exchange in January of 1979. And when I walked on that floor, there were the Ferranti boards, there was the yelling and screaming. And I'm like, oh, whoa, I'm in love. And I did as much as I could from the start to educate myself with regard to the markets, because the more you know, the more you're worth.
Right. So as you kind of built your career and kind of went through there, is there any one phase of the commodity trade that you've looked at more and kind of been more heavily involved in? I know you do a lot with bonds, trade bonds, and those kind of things.
I started on the floor in 1979, and in 1982, I was offered a job to go work on the London International Financial Futures Exchange.
Oh, right.
And that was a brand new exchange. It was a little mini Board of Trade. Mm-hmm. And I always like to say it was kind of like a mafioso job. They made me an offer I couldn't refuse. So I went, and I actually traded there for 12 years. And I traded. They had a U.S. Treasury bond pit there, but then they also had a German Bund pit, and then they had an Italian BTP, which was a 10-year Italian, and they had a long gilt, which was the 10-year. And I predominantly traded treasuries, either U.S. or German or English.
Yeah. And how long did you do that?
Until about right around the turn of the century, and they actually went computerized in London first, and I watched a lot of my mates, take their checkbooks. We all made money. The people on the floors made money. They said 90% of the people make money, and 10%, and 10% of the paper makes money. And I watched good traders take their checkbooks and their egos up to the offices, and some of them are like garbage men, and these days they blew it all. Yeah. And I ended up back at the Mercantile Exchange, and I started after 9/11. I started writing about the markets. Because the Mercantile Exchange was going the same way, and I thought, well, I need to reinvent myself, and I started writing about the markets, and still to this day I do that. Yeah. But I trade every day. I definitely trade every day, and I love it. If the doctor ever told me quit trading or die, I would tell him measure the box.
Right on. All right. So as you take a look at what's going on right now and the markets that we see and how everything's kind of evolving into what we have now, with the exception of everything kind of moving over to a algorithm-based computer model that's, taking the pits out of the way, what are some of the biggest changes you've seen over the course of that time?
The biggest, and I changed. I had to change, and I changed around 2003, 2004. The markets went computerized. I was a pit trader. I was a local, so a long trade for me was like a minute. And what we found, first it was the high frequency traders, now it's the algos. Is the more you click the mouse, the more you're giving away the edge. And I find, and I still coach, full-time traders that, you've got to make your couple, 3 trades a day, have a goal. And if you meet that goal, turn the computer off. See you tomorrow. Because in this trading game, you start stringing days together, and days turn into weeks, and weeks turn into months. And this is you keep this in the game. And before you know it, you put a nice string together, and you wake up every day knowing you're going to make money.
Right.
But I've even gotten to the point where, 15 years ago, you couldn't I only know, I bet you 5 gentlemen that can actually make money day trading futures. And I can make money day trading, but I'm not going to make money every day. And I found that swing trading is the way to go for me. I had a couple of big swing trades, one in 85 and one in around in the mid 90s. And I just found that it sometimes, they say, cut your losses, let your winners run. And that's what I've tried to do. Obviously I've come across Sean, and that's been that's swing trading heaven. His ideas are so long-term, and it's taken me a long time to learn to trade his ideas, because I don't know how many times I was long coffee at like 125, 130, and it would go to 145, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm a millionaire. Then it'll go all the way back down to 120. Oh no, I've got to, I gotta stop myself out with a small profit. And I've learned to keep my position small, but my convictions big.
Yep.
And
yes, Sean is he's an interesting guy. I've had him on the podcast for about as long as I've had the podcast going, I think. So I've had him on there since like 2018, maybe. Yeah, it was. It was December of 2018. Tell you this quick story. My wife and I were driving someplace, and she was driving, and I was, working on a few things. I get a phone call from Boca Raton, Florida, and it shows up there, and I'm like, I don't know anybody in Boca, but I'm gonna, whatever. It could be someone wanting to buy a tractor or whatever. So I pick it up, and it's Sean on the other end, and he starts talking to me. He's like, hey, I've been listening to your podcast. I got some you got some great, I think I have some good content I think I can add, and I would like an opportunity to talk to you about it. I'm like, great, let's go about it. So he starts talking about these grand solar minimums and sunspots and yada, yada, going crazy. And I'm like, who the hell is this guy at the other end of the floor? So I kind of remember some of these, grand solar minimums and these time frames he's talking about from history class of college and those kind of things. And I'm like, yeah, I'll get back to you, pal. So I hang up and I'm telling my wife, like, this some crackpot on the other end over here is talking to me. Some crazy thing, and I go through the whole thing. I go do some research, and lo and behold, what he starts talking about is there's a lot of people out there talking about it, and turns me on to Dr. Valentina Zarkova and all these different people. We've done some stuff there. So the one thing I'll say about Sean is that no matter what everyone else is saying, he never wavers from what he says, right? He doesn't come in one day and say, oh, this is going to happen, and then 4 months go by and it kind of starts getting close to where it's supposed to be, whatever he said was supposed to happen, and he doesn't change it, because I'll be honest with you, there's not been a piece of information in a time frame that he's laid out that something didn't happen, that he said was going to happen. So it's one of the most impressive things I've ever been around when it comes to weather forecasting, long-term weather model forecasting, that I've ever seen out of anyone I've been around since I've been doing this.
Well, I know, following his work since June of 2020, mm-hmm. There's, he's where he actually recommends a trade. He has 10 or 12 winners, and the only trade that I can think of that was a loser. And I took my medicine not too terribly long ago. He wanted to be long orange juice, looking for a hurricane season, and we only ended up with one, Ida, and it was quiet. But now it's rallying again, the orange juice, in anticipation of a freeze. Yeah. But sometimes you just have to take your medicine and take orange juice off the screen and just get on with something else.
Yep. And his work is really interesting. When you sit down there and listen to him break it down and what's going on, and the Atlantic oscillation and the Pacific, all these different things, it's some pretty interesting stuff. So, I mean, it's the one thing about Sean is that there's not, the way he looks at the market and the way he looks at everything is just so much different than anybody else I've come across.
Well, and as we know, the grains are all about weather. And I mean, for over a year, he's been talking about this being the coldest, nastiest winter ever. And boy, it's starting out with a bang. I mean, it's, they've had freezing temperatures down in Alabama again this weekend and again, middle of next week. Yep. And wow. Wow. So it's just impressive what he's able to see. And it's the thing about it is that the one thing that's so impressive about it is how accurate he's been with those weather models that he talks about, and how little you hear about what he's talking about on the mainstream news. Absolutely. It's totally crazy. So, well, let's jump in and talk about a little bit about what you see happening right now in the marketplace. We've got a lot of things, a lot of moving parts, a lot of things out there. If you take a look at it, really, you pick the commodity, and the volatility that we see is wildly crazy all over the place. I mean, you're looking at, wheat prices right now. You're looking at 23 wheat that you can start contracting for almost $8. I mean, and if you're farming out there right now and you're thinking like, I'm going to grow wheat, well, I've pretty much locked in a profits for the next, for this coming season and 23 as well. And I'm going to start playing some really long-term games here with what's going on. So I guess as you take a look at the market as a whole, what are some of your takeaways? Well, and this is something that I've been talking to my clients about recently, is what's the price of uncertainty? Yep. And great, you can start maybe hedging your wheat product or your corn, for next year. But we were just on fire in the West, in the Western states. Now we're building arcs. Right. Exactly. Yep. What happens, the cost, the price of uncertainty at the moment for me is these futures markets were designed basically, and the Board of Trade started things off to hedge future product. Well, I don't see a lot of farmers with the uncertainty out there coming and hedging right now, which means the algos and the long-term speculators, I believe, have free reign to run these markets up to where the price of uncertainty is a little bit, the odds start to move into the farmer's favor. Yeah. But I bet they're the natural sellers, the producers, and I don't think they're there at the moment.
So expand on that a little bit. What do you mean by the price of uncertainty?
How do we even know that this growing season in America is going to be? If we listen to Sean, it's like we don't want to hedge any of our product now. Right. How do we know that there won't be a late winter of floods? We had floods in 2019, and corn ran up $1. I mean, they were able to get it in the ground in the end, and it came right back off, but they still ran it up $1. So anyone who might have hedged, in advance, were kind of not too happy about their hedge.
Yep.
So
okay, so
go on.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
But and I even take this one step further with the price of uncertainty. At the moment we have a dollar that is spiking higher. It spiked higher again today, and it's my job to read smart money, and I do read smart money. And a gentleman who I give a lot of credit to, he's talking about, worldwide there's $296 trillion of debt, of which 26 trillion of it came in the second quarter. And a lot of that debt is dollar denominated. So with the dollar spiking higher like this and the supposed, taper and higher interest rates, when they have to roll that debt, it's you could sell Wall Street and just sell it. And we saw how Powell reacted a couple of years ago when he went into a little bit of a taper and the market went down and he succumbed to the market. And and I think the same is going to happen again. They can't, and Yellen's, she's in charge of the Treasury. They're not going to let this dollar run away. And I believe the money that the smart money that I read has been talking about yield curve control for a year now. And this gentleman says, when we see yield curve control, you close your eyes and buy gold, and gold will trade to new all-time highs.
Yep. And it's doing that right now. You're starting to see some gold. That's my next point. I was going to go into some inflationary hedging there with gold and what you see there. I mean, the last couple of days, gold kind of had a run down there. Last week, kind of got down the 1700 range a little bit. It's bounced back up to now where it's like 1863 or something like that. I think is what opened up this morning. I mean, as you take a look at gold and what you see happening there, I mean, what's your thoughts with that? And then how do you think inflation is going to play into all that?
Well, inflation's not going away. It's just not going away. But and gold is obviously a hedge against inflation. But what I truly believe it's a hedge against central banks not knowing how to deal with what they're dealing with. That's the real hedge. And you've got Lagarde, talking about we're going to stay lower forever, and talking the euro down, and it's just there's just so much uncertainty out there. I mean, gold has kind of traded sideways for the last year or so, but I think it's ready to go. I truly do. It's funny actually, because gold was another product. I quit. I was a bond trader. I quit trading the bonds about a year ago, just because after the central banks got involved, they took us out of the game, shall we say? And but then I started trading commodities. But I quit trading gold, and I literally bought 10 gold today at 1862.5, and it broke to 1847 something. I was losing 15 grand about 20 minutes after I bought it. It's like, wow, my timing is impeccable.
Yeah, there's that's you guys that do that stuff for a living, man. I don't know how you. I'd be so so crazy all the time, it'd be nuts. But I guess as you take a look at some of the stuff that we see happen around us right now, I mean, we talked about deflation, we talked about the whole thing. How do you think, like Bitcoin and those kind of currency, those digital currencies like that, how do you think they fit into all this kind of thing?
Boy, they fit in, and they scare the heck out of me. They really do. You know, I work really hard for my money, and I don't want to like wake up, you know, in an unregulated market and find out I don't have any money.
Right.
You know, and I have so many products to trade. I honestly have never made a Bitcoin trade, and a lot of my friends, a lot of my clients, they have, and they've done really quite well at it.
Mm-hmm.
But it just scares me. This smart money I read, he was talking about, you know, if they ever find out that, you know, that there was a war financed by Bitcoin, you know, that would be it. You know, they'll you know, you could take Bitcoin off the board. So,
yeah.
but you know, it's a product. It's there. It's a lot of people want to say it's almost competing with gold as a hedge against central banks not having a clue.
Right.
And you know, and a lot of people go on and on about the central banks. It's not my job to be critical of the central banks. It's my job to figure out how to make money in this economic environment. That's what my job is.
Yeah.
And other people, they waste all their time being critical.
Yeah. Yeah. They have. Yeah. I read a lot of stuff about Bitcoins and the various, you know, digital currencies that are out there and what that looks like. And it, to your point of regulation, there's just that idea that I can just create, and I guess it's no different than the dollar. I mean, you can kind of go out and create dollars as you need them type of thing, but it just feels like there's this aura about it that just it scares me. I'm right there with that. I don't. Maybe because I don't understand it, but
I think I just heard or I read somewhere there's 8,000 cryptocurrencies at the moment.
Yeah,
and I don't know. There's still only $1, and that's the biggest market in the world. The treasuries is the second biggest market in the world, and I'll keep my assets where they're liquid. I like to know that I can get in and out anytime I want.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, I could start my own cryptocurrency up and just start printing, you know, creating digital currency out there right and left. But it's a very weird thing. So,
you know, and maybe if you'd like to wrap this up, this is one thing that, and I don't get it. I spend a little bit of time on Twitter, and everyone is bearish. They're all, you know, this is a bubble, blah 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 blah. And the only thing I know about the stock market is Wall Street has always loved low interest rates.
Sure.
Yeah. And what have we had since 2008? We've had
very
historically low rates. You know, I'm not sure how old you are, but I'm 65 years old. I bought my first house and it was a 12% mortgage. Mm-hmm. You know, and now you could get one for 3%. But not only do we have historically low interest rates, we've got quantitative easing. and we've got taper. So now we're gonna taper from 120 down to 105 down to 90. That's still 105 more than we ever used to put in the 90s. You know, and we're going to taper right into the middle of the year. This is it's the biggest no-brainer. You just close your eyes and you buy every dip in the stock market because they're all bearish. I don't know. I don't get it, but I think it's the easiest trade out there.
Yep, agreed. So I couldn't do this without at least asking this one question. What's the craziest trade you ever made in a single day where you went from holy crap, man, I'm just lost everything I owned to like, oh man, I bounced back.
Okay. Are you ready? And this is funny because I wasn't sure how this would work because I have so many stories about trading in the pits and living abroad and everything. Okay, here's my craziest trade ever. And I am famous on the London International Financial Futures Exchange for this trade. It is Black Monday, right?
Mhm.
And and we're 6 hours ahead, right? So I get a phone call, and in the last hour, it started on Wednesday. Wednesday, the Dow was down 100. Thursday it was down, I don't know, in going into the last hour, the Dow was down 200 points, and then in the last hour it fell another 300 points. And back there in the 80s, the equities competed with treasuries for investment dollars. If a fund manager could return 7% on his money, well, the bond market was around 6 to 7%, so they competed for it. On that day, they on the Tuesday night, on the Monday night, Tuesday is when the phrase "flight to safety, flight to quality" was coined, because in that last hour they sold Wall Street down another 300 points to be down 506, I think, and the bond market went the other way. Now, back in the day, the bonds traded on the CBOT, the Chicago Board of Trade, and they had a 3-point limit. That was a 3 points is 32 ticks a point, 96 ticks. And after it went limit, you couldn't trade, until the next day. And that being a grain trader, that the grains have limits as well.
Mhm.
Well, I get a phone call from one of my friends who's in New York, and he says, get to work early in the morning. They all sold their stocks and bought bonds, and you don't have a limit. In London, we had no limit. So there I am, 8 o'clock in the morning, probably have a hangover or something. And I start buying treasury bonds, and I buy 20 contracts, and boom. I mean, it's maybe about a $6,000-7,000 winner, which back in that day, that was a lot of money.
That's a lot of money. Yeah.
Yeah. And I didn't take it. And then all of a sudden the market starts coming off, and at every tick, E.F. Hutton, who went out of business that day, E.F. Hutton and Goldman Sachs are there to buy 100 contracts each. Now, we never saw that kind of size. So I didn't do anything. I didn't get out. And now the long gilt is ready to open up, and I'm probably losing $3 to $4 grand on my treasury bonds. I'm like, okay, I'm going to go into the long gilt, scalp that, and then I'll worry about the bond position later. Well, literally, the bell rang in the gilt, and the gilt just went straight up. And after about 45 minutes, I mean, you're sweating profusely, and I've had to get out of the pit. You kind of have an idea of what your position is, but you're not sure, and you're adding up all the buys and the sells. I still have my trading cards right here, and I'm planning. I knew I made a lot of money, but I didn't know how much. And then it's like, oh my God, I got a treasury bond position on. And I look, and now the treasury bond position is making me about 20 grand. And it's like, okay, well, I don't know what to do here. Now it's coming up on lunchtime, and all my mates we've all had a great day. And they're like, come on, let's go. I'm like, well, I got this big position. I'm having my biggest day ever. Come on. We're going to go for a drink. So that's what we used to do in the afternoons in London, when in Rome. So I took my profits. I don't know. I was up maybe 40 grand or something. Huge. Everyone's in a great mood. We head to the pub, and have a few drinks. So now we come back, and the euro dollar, not the currency, but the euro dollar future is called 100 better. And the bond market has now rallied another 2 full points from where I got out. So it's like, okay, I think I'm going to get short. So I get short a 10 lot, and it immediately, and this is right before Chicago opens. And the bond market is locked limit up in Chicago. There's no trading. All the trading has to come into London. And the bond market goes up a little bit more. So I sell 10 more contracts, and the euro dollar, which is called to open up 100, opens 250 better. And our bond market goes up 5 straight points without touching the side. And all of a sudden, I'm not up 40 grand anymore. I'm down 60. And I don't think I got the money. So, and you still had trading cards and everything. Yeah. And so I don't want to hand in the trading cards because, if they find that out, they're liable, not me. They're my clearinghouse. So about a half an hour goes by, and I'm battling around with these levels. And then a Solomon Brothers comes in on the other side of the pit, and makes an offer. And the guy standing next to me is bidding higher than his offer. So I sell him 20 more contracts. And this guy's selling the bonds at 89 even. And then he goes down to 88 and a half, which means he's gone down 16 points, 16 ticks. And then he goes down to 88. Then he goes down to 87 and a half. Then he goes down to 87. Now at around 86 and a half, I'm scratch. I'm back in the game. And he's one of my mates who I was a season ticket holder for Chelsea Football Club. And he's one of my mates so I go stand next to him. And he's getting his count. And he's selling. It's a big order. Salomon Brothers at that time was one of the big players down there. And I said to him, how many do you got? He's like, I got lots. I'm like, okay, I back away a little bit, and then he takes the market down to 86 and then he takes it down to 85. And when he starts selling the 84 and a halves, I say to him, how many you got? He says, how many do you need? I said, I need 40. He says, I'll save you the last 40. So one thing leads to another, and then he looks around at the pit and he says, just. And the minute he says just, I said, buy 60. So I bought my 40. Now I went long because he knocked the market down like 5 or 6 full points on 40 contracts in about 20 minutes. That's $240,000 turnaround in my P&L. And so now I can take the cards and go hand them at the desk. No one's going to freak out with $200,000 worth of winners. Make a long story short, now he's knocked down so much, it's bounced back. I go do this, I go do that. I get out, and I didn't know how much I made, but I knew it was more money than I ever made my whole life. And this is the honest God truth. I left the exchange. I walked around the corner, and I walked in to see Trevor, the travel agent, and I booked 2 tickets around the world.
Wow. Wow. So you went up 40, down 60. And I
went from being broke out of the game to that day I made $250,000.
Wow. That's a swing. That's a roller coaster ride for sure, man.
And believe me, in the 90s, I've had bigger ups and downs than that.
Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah,
man. That's awesome. Well, Tony, this has been a great conversation, man. I think we should probably do this again sometime, man. I'd like to have you back on.
Absolutely. So it's been a pleasure.
Yeah, man, it's been awesome. If folks want to reach out to you and get more information about what it is that you're doing, what's the easiest way for them to do that?
Well, just go to my website, TonyLaPorta.com, TonyLaPorta.com. On there's a 2-week trial, a $17 trial. If you sign up for the trial, I'll make it good until the end of the year. So you're getting about a month and a half for $17. What I bring to the table is I bring a Discord trade room that we sit in every day. I have a lot of very good traders in there. And the nice thing about this Discord is it saves everything into the cloud. Like Sean has his own channel that anything he does on moving iron, I put in the cloud. Chip Nellinger, I put him in the cloud. Okay. So, you just did a thing about wheat with Chip yesterday. Believe me, Casey, anything you do, it's my homework. If I do my homework, and I listen to Smart Money, and Sean is Smart Money, and Chip Nellinger is Smart Money. Plus, he's got a 309 area code. That's Central Illinois. I'm from Chicago. I heard his area code. It's like, how do you not like this guy?
Exactly. Yeah. Well, that's awesome, man. Well, that's great, man. So make sure you go and check that out.
I write about the markets every day. I write about the stock market. I write about whatever positions I have on. I keep my readers in touch with my positions so they can see how I deal with greed and fear. And it's a great learning experience, especially for traders out there. So.
Well, folks, go check that out. Take advantage of what Tony's got going on there, because it's a different angle than what I think than most of the stuff you're going to run into, because he lives and breathes it every day. He's out there using his own money to make this stuff happen. So, Tony, appreciate you being on the podcast, man.
Very nice. Very nice having. Thank you for having me. Cheers, Casey.
Thank you very much. I'm Casey Seymour with Moving Iron Podcast. Make sure you check me out on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. That's where you find the latest editions of the Moving Iron Podcast. Also, check out MovingIronLLC.com for everything related to the Moving Iron podcast. So with that, I am Casey Seymour with Tony LaPorta. Let's go some iron, folks. Out.
You want to have a meaningful competitive advantage to help sell more equipment. Whether you represent the sales, parts, or management department of an implement dealership, there's a surprising amount of complexity when it comes to tire, wheel, and track technology. Let Axon worry about that so you can get back to supporting your customers. Axon has leveraged years of experience to create a streamlined process that gives you a proven path to help today's grower and sell more equipment. The roots of their organization go back almost 100 years to the invention of the rubber tractor tire. Supporting agriculture is the number one driver of Axon, from product development through sales and service. To find more or become an Axon dealer, head over to axontire.com.
Moving iron in the 21st century. Hard-working people working hard for